There's a moment in every creative project where the number of options exceeds your ability to choose between them. You know you need to make a move, but every possible move feels equally right or equally wrong. And the harder you think about it, the less clear it gets. For me, that moment has a very specific shape. I'm a jazz drummer, and it happens on stage, right when the band drops out and it's my turn to solo. And instead of the feeling you're supposed to have, which is, okay, here we go, I'm going to do my thing, instead, you feel a kind of low-level panic. It's like a fog settles over you. You're about to make 1,000 micro decisions in the next 30 seconds, and you can't figure out how to start. I spent a stretch of my 30s living in that cloud, years, and it baffled me because it had never been a problem before. When I was younger, less experienced, less technique, too dumb to get nervous, I used to want those moments. When the band dropped out and it was my turn, I leaned into it. And in retrospect, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't have a plan. I didn't need one. Something would just happen, and then something else would happen, and it usually felt okay. Sometimes better than okay. And then somewhere along the way, that changed. I'd be on a gig, sensing the solo coming, and I'd find myself hesitating, playing things that I immediately regretted, stuck in that fog of indecision where every option felt equally wrong. And as an improvising musician, that's not a small problem. Improvisation is a huge part of my job. It's also, I'd argue, a pretty good description of what creativity actually is in general. It's making decisions, one after another, mostly under some sort of pressure, mostly without enough information. The weird part is that more experience hadn't made it easier. It somehow made it harder. And as I was reflecting on this, it occurred to me that it started right around the time our first child was born. Not that I'm blaming my kids. And maybe it has no connection, but I've been wondering ever since whether becoming a father had something to do with it. Wanting to know what was going to happen in advance, becoming more risk averse in ways I wasn't even aware of. Let me know in the comments if I'm just crazy or if parenthood did something strange to your creativity too. I read an essay a while back by an anesthesiologist. I know, bear with me. Yes, it was an anesthesiologist who went through something that sounded oddly familiar to me. He'd been practicing for years, thousands of cases, the kind of depth where decisions are supposed to come automatically. And then one day, they just stopped coming automatically. He described standing in front of the patient facing what should have been a routine call and feeling the ground drop out. His response was the same thing most of us would do if we lost our confidence in our instincts. He reached for more information. He read 5 journal articles on that specific situation he was facing, and he found that they contradicted each other. So taken together, they offered no guarantee, no clear answer. And he writes about staring through what he calls a narrow black fissure into a void. The information didn't help. It just made the void larger. What he eventually concluded, and this is the part that stuck with me, is that his problem wasn't a knowledge problem. He still had all the knowledge. What he'd lost was trust in his own access to it. In the essay, he says, when we are faced with 10 different factors, all acting upon each other, and among them creating some astronomical total of variables, reason is defeated, and only intuition can cope. Reason is defeated. That's a remarkable statement from a doctor. But I think it's true. At some point, the variables in any creative problem multiply past what conscious deliberation can handle. And when that happens, you have 2 options. You can keep deliberating, which is how you end up frozen or reading 5 journal articles that cancel each other out. Or you can just find a way to trust the thing that was working before you started trying so hard. It took me years to figure out what was actually wrong. And what I eventually landed on through trial and frustration, not any kind of insight, was that I'd been solving the wrong problem. At some point, I had started trying to know what I was going to play before I played it. And that's not actually how improvisation works. The solo isn't a plan you execute, it's a conversation you're having in real time, including a conversation with yourself about what you just did. You can't predetermine it, but I'd been trying to, and that trying was the problem. What I started doing instead was this. I'd sensed the solo coming, and instead of trying to form a complete idea, I'd just pick one thing. Just one. Sometimes it was a dynamic, loud, or a specific drum, floor tom only. Sometimes it was a texture or a rhythm, something I could treat as a theme and build on. Whatever it was just one thing, not a plan, more like a constraint, a frame to step into. And then I'd step into it and let everything else come from there. This sounds like a small thing, but it wasn't. What I was doing was separating the decision from the execution, making the one call that needed to be made consciously, and then handing back the rest to the part of my brain that actually knew what to do. The knowledge hadn't gone anywhere. I just needed to give it a door. Eventually, even that decision faded back into my intuition, but now I know to reach for it if I feel that void coming on again. By the way, I have a newsletter that goes even deeper into ideas like this, so head over to ktfpod.com if you're curious. Here's what I think this is really about, though, beyond drumming. Every creative project has moments where the number of possible moves exceeds what you can reasonably evaluate. What font, what opening line, what key, what structure, what to cut. Most of the time you can reason through some of it, but there's always a point where the variables compound past the edge of reason, where more thinking is just more noise. And when you hit that point, the answer usually isn't more research or more deliberation. It's a constraint, one decision that narrows the field just enough for everything else to follow. Not the perfect decision, not a fully formed plan, just an honest move, loud, floor tom, silence, then chaos, and then just the willingness to see what you can do with it. The anesthesiologist got his instincts back when he stopped trying to understand them. I got mine back when I stopped trying to plan the thing I was supposed to be discovering in real time. There's probably a decision you're sitting on right now where you've been waiting for a certainty that isn't coming. You might not need more information. You might just need a frame, one limitation, one starting point, and then the nerve to step inside it. So the next time you feel like you don't know how to start, ask yourself, what's the one constraint I could set right now that would let everything else follow? It doesn't have to be the right one, it just has to be one. Thanks so much for hanging out. I'll catch you in the next episode. Until then, keep the flow. Right? Why does that happen right when I start to record? I get an itch somewhere. It's probably psychosomatic. Somatic. Yes. We have confirmation in the old noodle.